In this video, I'll walk you through how I configured the voice AI assistant in Vapi to handle dental clinic appointments. The system uses custom tools that connect to n8n workflows through webhooks, enabling real-time appointment management with Google Calendar and Google Sheets. So the core of this system is the integration between Vapi and n8n using custom tools. And here, as you can see, I've created 7 custom tools that handle different appointment operations. Each tool is essentially a webhook endpoint that triggers a specific n8n workflow. Let me walk through each tool and its purpose. First, we have the Create Patient Profile tool. And the purpose of this tool is to create a new patient record in our Google Sheets whenever we have a first-time caller. So this tool captures basic information like their name, phone number, and date of birth so that we can store it into our patient database for future reference. The next tool we have is Get Slots Any. So this tool checks appointment availability across all 3 dentists, and when a patient doesn't have a preference or wants the earliest available slot, this tool will be activated and searches all dentist calendars simultaneously to locate the first available time slot along with which dentist has that availability. So the parameters required to activate the tool would be the service type, preferred date, and preferred time. So why do we need this service type? Basically because the service type will be used to calculate the duration of the service, which will then be used to determine if there is enough time for dentist calendar to perform the service. The next tool we have is Get Slot Specific, and this tool is basically the same as Get Slots Any. The only difference is it's used to track availability of a specific dentist if the user requests so. So obviously we would need an additional parameter, which is the dentist's name. The next tool we have is Book Slots tool. And once we've confirmed availability, the Book Slots tool handles the actual booking. This tool will receive all the patient's details, such as their name, phone, dentist name, service type, date of birth, the appointment date, and time. And it then creates a calendar event in Google Calendar and also records the details of the appointment in Google Sheets. Moving on, we have our Find Appointment tool. This tool basically is used to locate existing appointments for rescheduling and cancelling purposes. So the patient will provide their phone number, their name, and their date of birth so that the tool is able to search across all 3 dentist schedules in Google Sheets to locate their upcoming appointment. And it will return some critical information like the date, time, dentist name, service type, all of which we will need for the next steps. Next, we have Reschedule Appointment tool. So this tool handles appointment changes. It uses the appointment ID to update the events on Google Calendar and corresponding Google Sheets record. So these are the parameters we need to activate this tool. The last tool we have is Cancel Appointment tool. Basically, this tool just deletes an event from Google Calendar and updates the status in Google Sheets to cancel for record keeping purposes. So each of these tools is configured with a server URL that points towards an n8n webhook. So when Vapi calls the tool, it sends a HTTP post request to the corresponding n8n webhook with all the parameters that the AI extracted from the conversation. For example, this is a server URL of our Cancel Appointment tool. For the book slots, this is our server URL, which is connected to this URL here in our n8n workflow. Now, to make all this work seamlessly, I've configured the assistant with a comprehensive system prompt that explains when to use each tool, what parameters are required, and how to handle responses. So let me walk through a complete conversation to show how these tools work together. First, we need to give the assistant an identity. So you are the receptionist or at ABC Dental Clinic, speak naturally and conversationally, be empathetic, etc. And then we need to give them some information about our clinic. So when our operating hours, where is our clinic located, what are the available dentists and services offered. So one thing to note is that if we have a longer list of company policies, service lists in more detail, we can actually upload them here in a TXT file. And the AI will be able to access these files when they deem so. So next we have our call conversation flow. So first we want to greet the caller and identify the intent of the caller. So start every call with a warm greeting and listen for the patient's intent. The intent may include booking an appointment, rescheduling, cancelling, or asking questions about the clinic, or even to just directly speak to a human. Secondly, we have to qualify our patients. So we always ask whether they are a new patient or an existing patient. So if they are a new patient, we would need to collect their full name, phone number, and date of birth so that we can store this in our patient database. And if they are existing patients, we just simply acknowledge their information and proceed to their request. So this is how an appointment booking flow would be like. First, we will be asking, what service would you like to book today? And the AI will be listening for one of the services that we actually provide. And then it will proceed to ask if they have a preferred dentist they'd like to see, or would they just like to book with any available dentist. So if they have a preferred dentist, they would say Dr. Aaron, Brian, or Chris, and then the AI would then store the dentist's name. But if they want any available dentist, the AI would just note that they are flexible with any dentist. The next step would be to collect the date and time for the appointment. So the AI would then ask, well, what date and time would you prefer? Please provide both the date and time. And once they receive both date and time, we prompt the assistant to format the date in this format, YYYY and MDD, and as well as format the time to HHMM in 24-hour format. We will then proceed to call the get slot specific tool with the dentist name, preferred date, preferred time, and service type. So for patients who want any available dentist, we will just call the get slots any tool instead with the preferred date, time, and service type. This is just instructing the assistant to how to respond and whatnot. So after the patient confirms everything, you call book slots tool with what parameters. So we need the name, phone, date of birth, dentist name, service type, appointment date, and the time. And after the book slots tool has been called and performed successfully, the assistant will reply with, perfect, your appointment for service with dentist is confirmed for this date at this time. Is there anything I can help you with? And that's it. So for the reschedule appointment flow, it would just be firstly to collect patient information, locate the existing appointment using find appointment tool, and confirm that they found their appointment, ask for the new preferred time or date, and then once again confirm if they want to reschedule this, if there is an availability, of course. And once the user confirms, they will just proceed to call the tool with required parameters. As well as for the cancel appointment flow, is pretty much the same. You just firstly collect the information, confirm if they want to cancel their appointment. If they do want to confirm, you just call the cancel appointment tool with these parameters, and that's it. Appointment has been cancelled. So these are just additional prompts to give the assistant. Answering questions about the clinic, just giving them information about our clinic. If you don't know what to say, offer to transfer them to a human. Other rules such as memory management, tell them to always remember the patient's name, number, and date of birth once they provide it, so that we don't have to keep asking for the same information over and over again. Next, we also have date and time formatting. This is very important because without this line here, the Vapi assistant actually cannot tell what day and what date it is today. So we have to give it, a reference on what day is it today and what date is it. and we have to let it know to always convert to this format so that we can process the data better in n8n. And tool calling, only call these tools when you have all required parameters, blah blah blah, etc. And so that's all for our system prompt. Yeah. So this is the architecture of our data flow. It's relatively straightforward. Firstly, our patient will call the dental clinic. Our Vapi assistant will pick up the call. It will identify the intention of the caller, decide which tools they need to call, and they will extract relevant information to call these tools. It will then send a HTTP post request to our n8n workflows where business logic, data transformation, and the automation actually takes place. It also interacts with Google Calendar and Google Sheets as needed. So after each action is completed, we will then update the database or the records in Google Sheets. In this section of the video, I will be walking you through how data flows through each of these workflows step by step. So let's dive right into the first workflow we have, which is check availability specific. So this workflow is triggered when a patient wants to book an appointment with a specific dentist. The workflow, as you can see, starts with a webhook trigger called check availability specific. And when Vapi calls the get slot specific tool, it will send a HTTP post request to this webhook endpoint. And here's the incoming data from Vapi. It may be very long and you might get scared because there's so much data, but we'll just go through the important data that we need. So as you can see, it also includes this important piece of data, which is the tool call ID. So this is actually a unique identifier for this specific function call, which we will need to submit a response to Vapi. I will elaborate a little bit further, so let's just move on to the next node. So the next node is the extract data node. In this node, we basically use n8n's edit fields functionality to pull out just the relevant information that we require from Vapi's nested structure. So we don't have to look at all these data that we don't need. We're only pulling out the data that we want. In this case, which is to check availability for a specific dentist, we will then need the dentist's name, the service type, the preferred date, preferred time, and also the tool call ID so that we can send a response back. So in our case, we have our dentist name as Dr. Brian. What service type? We have filling. The date is 29th of December and the time is 10 a.m. Okay. So in the next node, we have our if node. So the purpose of this node is simple. Basically, if we do not have the dentist name or service type or preferred date, it would then lead us down the false branch, because these three pieces of information is essential to check for availability, right? So this node just makes sure that this data is not empty. And then it would then lead us down to the next node, which is the preserve data node. This node is just to preserve this data so that it can later be merged with the calendar results. So think of it as holding onto the request parameters while we go fetch the calendar data. And the next node would be the switch node. This node has three paths, yeah? So we either check availability for Dr. A, Dr. B, or Dr. C. And this node, decides which doctor we want to check availability for. And so the rules would be to get the dentist's name, and if it contains Dr. A's name, it will go down path A. If it contains Dr. Brian's name, it will go down path B, and and so on. And in our case, we have Dr. Brian, so it was going to bring us down through path B, and we're going to get slots for Dr. B. And the only required information in this node, which is the date. So what this node does is just checking for any events between this time frame. So if there are no events, meaning there are no appointments scheduled at all between this, it will return an empty array. And this empty array actually means that there is availability because there are no events between this time. And this will then lead us to our merge node to merge the preserved data from previously, because if we do not merge the data from our preserved data node, it would just, the output from here would essentially be an empty array, which would be kind of useless. So the next important node here is our code node. So this code node actually just helps us calculate the available slots. So for example, we fed this data in, the service type, the preferred date and time, the dentist name, and so what they gave us was, the tool call ID. Of course, we need that, and whether or not this slot is available. They gave us back our doctor's name, the date, the appointment date, appointment time matches with the preferred time, the specific, the service type, because bear in mind each service may have different durations. So this code actually calculates the duration and comes back with whether or not the dentist has availability. So as we can see, since we did give a specific time, the mode they chose was specific time, and they gave us the available slots. In this case, we requested for 10 a.m. So the message that they gave us, returned to us, was 10 a.m. is available with Dr. Brian. Moving on is the if node. So this node just checks if there is availability. So if available is true, it will then lead us to our success response node. This node is a very important node because Vapi requires a very specific JSON format, which I said before. The tool call ID is a very critical piece of information, and let me show you why here. Because basically, when we want to respond to Vapi, we need to respond in a very specific JSON format, which is results an array, and we have our tool call ID and the actual result, which is the actual data containing whether or not that is available, And this structure will tell Vapi, here's the answer to the function call you made. And so if the slot is not available, it would then lead us down to this error response, which would respond to Vapi that there are no available time slots found for the dentist on this date. And then it would then proceed to ask the user for a new date or time. And of course, the final node is respond to webhook node. In this case, respond to Vapi. And so finally, this sends the formatted response back to Vapi via the webhook connection. So as you can see, we followed the exact JSON format that is requested to format the response. And as you can see, we have another path for the error response. And that's it for our chat availability workflow. Next, we have the chat availability any workflow. Basically, it's the same as the chat availability specific workflow. The only difference here is that we do not have a switch node here. So what actually happens, instead of searching through a specific dentist calendar, it will search all 3 dentist calendars simultaneously, and basically the same thing happens, but the difference is there is no switch nodes. So moving on to the book slots workflow, this is where the actual appointment booking happens. So after the AI has confirmed availability and collected all the patient information, this workflow would create an event in the calendar as well as record the appointment in our system. So let me walk you through the process real quick. First, we have our webhook trigger, and the workflow starts when Vapi calls the book slots tool. And looking at the incoming data, we do have our tool call ID as well as all the relevant information needed to create an appointment, which are the username, phone, dentist name, service type, date of birth, appointment date, and appointment time. The next node would then be to extract the data out of Vapi's nested structure so that it gives us a clean, flat object to work with instead of this messy data we have just extracted what we need for this workflow. So the next node is a validation check. So this if node just basically ensures that we have all the required information before we move on. So if any of these fields are missing, the workflow would then take the error path and responds back to Vapi with an error message saying what information is needed. So if everything is present, we would then proceed to the booking logic. In this node, we have a code node that calculates the end time. So here's an important detail. Appointments aren't just single point in time, they have a duration, right? So this code node calculates the end time based on the service type. So the code has service duration mapping. For example, for cleaning it's 60 minutes, checkup 30 minutes, filling 45 minutes, root canal is 90 minutes, and so on. So what this code node does is it actually takes the appointment start time, adds the appropriate duration, and then calculates the end time. It also formats both times in the ISO 8601 format that Google Calendar expects, including the time zone offset for, in our case, Kuala Lumpur, which is +800. And so the output, as you can see, includes our start date time, end date time, pulls all original patient information, as well as the tool call ID here. So the next node would be the routing. So we use a switch node for the dentist routing. Basically similar to checking availability. Since in this case we are looking for Dr. Brian, so we want to book an appointment with Dr. Brian, not with Dr. Aaron or Dr. Chris. So then we use a switch node to branch us to Dr. Brian's path. So in this node, we have the calendar node of Dr. Brian. And what is required in this node is basically, the start time and the end time to create an event. So this calendar node is actually configured to connect to each the specific dentist's calendar. It sets the event start time using our calculated start date time here. Sets the event end time using our calculated end date time as well. Sets the summary title as our username. And we have also a description of what service type is requested, right? So notice we are using the formatted date time fields we calculated earlier in the code node. So because the Google Calendar requires the ISO 8601 format with time zone, which is why we did that calculation step. Okay. So the next node would be a Google Sheets node where we want to record our booking information. So this will serve as our appointment database and backup record. So we're appending a new row to the dentist sheets with columns for the name, phone, date of birth, phone number, service type, start time, end time, the status, description, event ID, as well as the dentist. So the event ID is the calendar ID of the event we just created. Yeah. So having the event ID in the sheet is very crucial. It's how we can later find and modify the calendar event if they decide to reschedule or cancel. Yeah. So next would be another if node. This is just to make sure that the calendar actually created an event, and so it will then give us an event ID. So this node just makes sure that we actually have the event ID. And then moving on, it will then take us to the success response to format the data in Vapi's required structure, a results array with the tool call ID and the result object. And the last would be to just respond to the webhook to Vapi. So this is what we're actually sending back to Vapi. Your appointment with Dr. Brian on this date at this time has been confirmed. And so this is one final step where we update the central patients sheet. This is our master record of all patients across all dentists. We're looking up the patient by their name and updating their record on the next appointment date and time, as well as their event ID. And so this gives us a single place to see all patient information regardless of which dentist they are seeing. This is how our patient sheets would look like, just for reference. So now let's look at the reschedule workflow. So the workflow begins with the webhook trigger as usual. Moving on, we use the extract data node to pull the relevant fields from Vapi structure. So we're going to need the new date, time, user's name, phone, date of birth, dentist name providing the service type, as well as the tool call ID. Another piece of information that we're supposed to get is the appointment ID or event ID. They are both the same thing in this case. Because without the event ID, we wouldn't know which calendar event to update. And you might notice we're looking up the appointment ID in Google Sheets, even though the appointment ID should be coming from Vapi. So here's why this node is actually necessary. When the patient says they want to reschedule, the AI should remember the appointment ID from the earlier Find Appointment tool call. However, after some testing, we've discovered that Vapi doesn't reliably retain this information between two calls. So sometimes they return the event ID as null or 1, which obviously are invalid IDs, as you can see that event ID is relatively long like this. And so we use, instead of relying on Vapi's memory, we just use the patient's details, their name, date of birth, and their phone number to look up their appointment in Google Sheets and return the event ID from our database, which we can be used to update the calendar. Okay, so the next node is the if node, and this if node basically validates that we found the appointment in our sheets. And so if the event ID didn't exist, we would have taken the error path. Okay. And so since we do have our new preferred date, new preferred time, the dentist name, and as well as event ID, we will go ahead and go down through the true path, which is to preserve the data. We're going to preserve the necessary information that we're going to be using to update the calendar later on. So the next node is our code node. So just like the booking workflow, we need to calculate the end time for the rescheduled appointment. So this code uses the same service duration mapping, and it outputs the new date, the new time, then the start date time, the end date time in the Google Calendar's required format, as well as the other appointment details, and the appointment ID. The next node is a switch node that routes based on which dentist the appointment is with, and since each dentist has their own separate Google Calendar, we need to update the correct calendar. So the switch route, it routes to one of three paths, which is either dentist Aaron, Brian, or Chris. In our case, it will be dentist Dr. Brian, right? And so it's going to move branch us right to Dr. Brian's calendar. As we can see, the Google Calendar node is configured to update an existing event and not create a new one. So this is important because we are trying to modify the appointment and not make a duplicate. And so we're going to use the update operation and providing the event ID as well as the new start date time and the end date time. So the Google Calendar takes the event ID, finds the existing event, and updates it to the new time slot. Okay, so everything remains the same, only the time is changed here. And the next node would be to update our Google Sheets record. So after updating the calendar, we immediately want to update our Google Sheets. So we're going to use the update row operation, and we're going to use the user's name to match. And we're just going to update the start time and end time as well as the description. We're going to change it to reschedule. The next node would be an if node. So all three branches will converge into this if node, and is going to check if the update was successful. So if we got a confirmation from both the calendar update and sheets update, we can proceed to the success response. If something failed, maybe a network error or some other error, we will go to the error response. So in the success response, we're going to format the message we want to send back to Vapi. So we're sending back the tool call ID as well as the result. And we're going to send it in a format that is required by Vapi. And so the final step would be to update the master patient sheet to reflect the new appointment date and time. And this ensures that when we look up this patient in the future, we see their current upcoming appointment and not the old one. Finally, let's take a look at the cancel appointment workflow. This is the most straightforward of our workflows. It simply finds the appointment and deletes it from both the calendar and our records. So let me show you how it works. So the overall structure should look familiar by now. We start with the webhook receiving the cancellation request. We extract the patient's phone number and other details just like in the reschedule workflow. And then we look up the appointment in Google Sheets by their user's name, date of birth, phone number to get the actual event ID. So again, we're going to do this lookup because Vapi doesn't reliably remember the appointment ID. So we're going to have to look it up in our sheets to get the real event ID from our database. And once we have the event ID, the switch routes will route to the correct dentist based on which dentist the appointment is with. And each branch will do two things. First, we're going to delete a calendar event using the delete operation in the Google Calendar node. And this permanently removes the appointment from the dentist's calendar, freeing up that time slot. The other thing that it's going to do is we're going to update the Google Sheets record. Notice that we're not deleting a row from the sheet, but we're updating it. And we're actually just going to change the status here to cancel so that we have a record that this appointment was cancelled. So then all three branches will converge and we format a success response for Vapi with the cancellation confirmation. And finally, we update the master patient sheet to clear out their next appointment since it no longer exists. And we're going to update the master record as well to be cancelled and cancel out their event ID. And that's our complete system. So what we've built here is a voice AI receptionist that can handle the full appointment cycle without any human intervention. So for a dental clinic or any other service-based business, this means that patients can book, reschedule, and cancel appointments 24/7. So there will be no more phone tag or missed calls, automatic calendar management across multiple providers, a complete audit trail in Google Sheets, as well as all delivered through natural conversation. So the system uses no-code tools, which we use Vapi for the voice AI, n8n for the workflow automation, and Google Sheets for data storage. So this makes it maintainable, scalable, and cost-effective. This same architecture can be adapted for spas, salons, medical clinics, or any other business that manages appointments. And thank you for watching.